I still remember the exact moment I realized I had been invisible for years. It was a Thursday afternoon in March. I was sitting at my desk at work, eating a sad desk lunch, leftover pasta from 2 nights before, when my phone buzzed. It was my brother. I smiled when I saw his name on the screen, the way I always did. We hadn't talked in almost 2 weeks, which wasn't unusual. He gets busy. I always told myself that. I answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said. His voice had a weird flatness to it. Not cold exactly. More like he'd rehearsed something and was now delivering it on autopilot. "Hey, I was just thinking about you," I said. "Mom mentioned the wedding date got locked in. June 14th, right? I was going to ask you about." "That's actually why I'm calling." Something in my chest went still. Not alarm. Not yet. Just stillness. The way the air gets right before a storm, but you're not sure it's a storm. "Okay," I said. He took a breath. "So Courtney and I have been going back and forth on the guest list. You know how her family is. She has like 40 cousins alone, and her parents are paying for most of the venue, and we're trying to keep the numbers manageable." I was still holding my fork. "We're doing 200 guests," he said. "But we had to make some hard calls." 200 guests. 200. I set the fork down very carefully so it didn't make a sound. "We're not including some people from my side," he continued. It wasn't personal. It was just about balancing the numbers between our two families. "Are you telling me I'm not invited to your wedding?" Silence. Not a long silence. Maybe 3 seconds. But I have replayed those 3 seconds more times than I can count. "It's not that you're not invited," he started. "It's just that with the numbers. Am I on the guest list or not?" Another pause. "No," he said. "You're not." I was 31 years old, sitting in an open-plan office in downtown Chicago, holding a fork with cold pasta on it, being told by my only sibling that I would not be at his wedding. I said, very quietly, "I see. It's not personal. You said that already." I don't remember exactly how the call ended. I think I said something like, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." I think I said I had to get back to work. I think my voice was steady the whole time because I had spent my entire life making my voice steady, so that no one would be uncomfortable. I put the phone face down on my desk. I stared at my computer screen. Someone across the office laughed at something. A printer beeped, and I sat there and thought about the last 4 years. 4 years ago, my brother was 28 and drowning. He had just been laid off from his second job in 18 months. His savings were gone. He and Courtney were renting a one-bedroom apartment in Evanston, and they were 3 months behind on rent. He called me crying one night. I mean, actually crying, which my brother almost never did, and said he didn't know what to do. I was 27. I had just gotten a promotion at my company, a mid-sized logistics firm where I worked in operations. I wasn't rich, but I was careful with money. I had no debt except a small car payment, and I had a cushion. A real cushion, built slowly over years of packing lunches and skipping vacations and saying maybe next time to a lot of things. I didn't hesitate. I told him I'd help. That first month I sent him $2,000 to cover back rent. I told him not to worry about paying it back. Just get stable. He cried again. He said I was saving his life. He said he didn't know what he'd do without me. The 2,000 became a monthly transfer. It started at 1,500, then went up to 2,200 when he went back to school to finish his degree and couldn't work full-time. My parents couldn't help. My dad was retired on a fixed income and my mom had been dealing with health issues that ate into their savings. So it was me, just me. For 4 years, I sent money every single month. I never missed one. I paid for his last semester of tuition outright, just under $9,000, because he was 4 credits short of graduating and had run out of financial aid. I paid it because he asked me to, and because I loved him and because I believed in him. I also helped my parents. Not as much, maybe 400 a month, sometimes more when something came up. A new water heater. My mom's copays. My dad's truck needed brake work last winter. I just covered it. I didn't make a big deal about it. That's just what you do. I sat at my desk that Thursday afternoon and I added it all up in my head. 4 years. Monthly transfers to my brother averaging about $2,000. Tuition. Random expenses he asked for. Help with my parents. All in somewhere around $125,000, give or take $125,000. And I was not invited to the wedding. I finished my pasta. I went back to work. I didn't cry until I got home. That night I called my mom. I needed to hear her say it was a mistake. I needed her to say she'd talk to him. That of course I would be there. That this was some miscommunication that would get sorted out by morning. Instead, she said, "I know, honey. Courtney has a really large family. It's been very stressful for both of them." I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. "Courtney's family is paying for most of the venue," she continued. "They have a lot of say over how many people from your brother's side can come. He's in a tough spot." "Mom," I said. "He's my brother. I'm his only sibling." "I know. I've been sending him money every month for 4 years." "I know, sweetheart. Does that just not?" I stalked. I took a breath. "Does that not factor in at all?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think you should talk to him again when things settle down. He's very stressed right now." That was it. That was the conversation. I called my dad the next morning. My dad is a man of very few words, but I've always trusted his judgment. I laid it out for him plainly. I told him what my brother had said, what my mom had said, and I asked him what he thought. He said, "I'm sorry this happened, but it's his wedding and he's got to make his own decisions." I said, "Dad, I paid his tuition. I've been sending money every month. I covered." "I know what you've done," he said, "and I think it was generous, but you can't give with expectations. That's not how giving works. You can't give with expectations." I hung up the phone and sat in my car in the parking garage at work, gripping the steering wheel, thinking about all the times I had given without expecting anything. Not repayment. Not recognition. Just not this. Just not this. Just not being erased. I had never once asked my brother to pay me back, not a single dollar. I had never brought it up at family dinners, never said, "Remember when I helped you with rent?" Never used it as leverage or ammunition. I gave because I wanted to, because I wanted to. Because watching someone you love struggle is its own kind of pain and I had the means to ease it, so I did. And I was not invited to his wedding. I opened my banking app that afternoon. I looked at the recurring transfer I had set up 4 years ago. The one that went out automatically on the first of every month, like clockwork, like breathing. I canceled it. One click. Done. I didn't send a message. I didn't call. I didn't announce it. I didn't message. I also looked at the two smaller transfers to my parents, and I sat with those longer. My parents were not the ones who made this decision, but they had both, in their own quiet ways, told me that what had been done to me was acceptable, that I should be understanding, that his stress mattered more than my exclusion. And I thought about the fact that they were currently planning to attend that wedding, to sit in the front row and watch my brother get married. And I was going to be home alone that day because his wife's family had a lot of say. I reduced the transfers to my parents by half. I didn't stop them entirely, but I pulled back, and then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. By the second week of April, my brother called. I let it go to voicemail. He said he'd noticed the transfer hadn't come through and wanted to make sure everything was okay. I texted back, "Everything is fine on my end." He called again the next day. I let it go to voicemail again. This time he said he was a little confused, and could I just call him back when I had a chance? I didn't call back. The third call came 2 days later, and this time he left a longer message. His voice had changed. The flatness was gone and something more urgent had replaced it. He mentioned that he and Courtney had some bills coming up, and that he had sort of been counting on the transfer, and he'd appreciate a heads up if something had changed. I sent him a text that said, "I've made some changes to my finances. I should have communicated that earlier, and I'm sorry for the short notice." He replied within 4 minutes. "What does that mean? Are you stopping the transfers?" I replied, "Yes." The phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that I still have saved on my phone. In it, he starts out measured and calm, and then, about 40 seconds in, The calmness cracks, and he says he cannot believe I would do this right before his wedding, that he and Courtney are already under enormous pressure, and that this is not the time for me to make a point. This is not the time to make a point. As if $125,000 were a point I was making. My mom called the next morning. She said she'd heard from my brother. Her voice was careful, the way it gets when she's trying to navigate between two people she loves, and she doesn't want to blow anything up. Honey, I think maybe you could wait until after the wedding to make any changes. It's just a few more months. I said, Mom, I'm not coming to the wedding. There's nothing to wait for. She was quiet for a moment. I understand you're hurt. I am hurt. But cutting off the money right now, right before everything, it's going to cause a lot of problems. He caused a problem in March, I said. I'm just responding to it. She tried a few more approaches. She said Courtney's family had really backed them into a corner. She said my brother felt terrible about it, but didn't know how to fix it. She said maybe there was some compromise. Maybe I could come to the rehearsal dinner or the after party, or some version of it. I said, I'm not interested in a consolation event. She got a little quieter then, and then she said something that I have thought about every day since. I just hope you don't let money make you hard. I held the phone for a long moment after she said that. Let money make me hard. As if the money were the problem. As if I were the one who had introduced money into this situation. As if I had not spent 4 years quietly, consistently, lovingly keeping my brother afloat, and then been excluded from the most important day of his life because someone else's family had a lot of say. I said, I love you, Mom. I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up. What happened after that came fast. My brother texted me almost every day for 2 weeks. Some messages were frustrated. Some were almost conciliatory. Some were a strange mix of both. He said he wanted to talk. He said he missed me. He said he didn't understand why I was doing this to him. He said he'd see if there was any way to add me to the list, that last one. I'll see if there's any way to add me to the list. Like I was a name on a waiting list at a restaurant. Like after 4 years and $125,000, my attendance at his wedding was something he'd have to see about. I stopped replying to his texts. Then Courtney got involved. She sent me a message on Instagram, a long one, in which she explained the venue constraints at length. Told me she hoped I understood it wasn't personal, and then near the end said she was sure I could appreciate how stressful it was to plan a wedding with 2 families and limited seats. I read it once, I didn't reply. 3 days later she posted something on her Instagram story. It wasn't about me by name, but it was a quote. The kind of graphic that goes around, about how some people use money to control the people they're supposed to love, and how she and her fiancé were choosing peace over drama this season. I took a screenshot. My mom called me that night and asked if I had seen it. I said yes. She said she thought Courtney had been out of line. That was the first time she'd said anything critical about Courtney, and honestly, it surprised me. I didn't say much. I just said I appreciated her telling me. What I did not tell my mom was that I had already forwarded the screenshot to an attorney. I had a friend from college. She's a family law attorney now, mostly does divorce work, but she knows people. And I called her the day after Courtney posted the story. I explained the whole situation, the financial support, the exclusion from the wedding, and now a public post that, while vague, was clearly designed to characterize me as a controlling manipulator. She connected me with another attorney, someone who handles civil matters. He looked at what I sent him. The years of bank transfer records I'd saved. Screenshots of texts where my brother directly asked me to cover specific expenses. Courtney's Instagram post. And he said we had grounds for a defamation claim if we wanted to pursue it. He also said the more immediate move was a cease and desist, to put them on notice that any further public posts targeting me, even vague ones, would have legal consequences. I said, let's do it. The letter went out on a Friday. My brother called me 7 times that day. I answered on the 7th call. His voice was different now. Not frustrated. Not measured. Just stunned. Like someone had finally made something real for him that he hadn't believed was real before. You got a lawyer? He said. Yes. Over a wedding guest list? over $125,000 and a defamatory Instagram post. Silence. I don't I don't understand you right now, he said. That might be true, I said. But the attorney's letter is pretty clear, so if there are things you don't understand about the legal side, you should probably talk to someone about that. Are you seriously threatening to sue me? I'm putting you on notice that I won't tolerate being publicly characterized as controlling or manipulative after years of financial support. That's different from a threat. He said some things after that. I'm not going to repeat all of them because some of them were said in a moment of shock, and I don't think they were entirely what he meant, and also because some of them were exactly what he meant, and I'd rather not give them more space than they've already taken up in my head. The gist was that I had changed, that I had let this blow up into something insane, that Courtney was devastated, and that he couldn't believe this was happening right before the most important day of his life. I said, I hope the wedding is everything you want it to be. And I meant it. I genuinely meant it, which is maybe the strangest part. I wasn't trying to blow up his wedding. I wasn't trying to destroy anything. I was just done being someone who could be set aside without consequence, and for the first time in my adult life, I had actually done something about it. My parents found out about the cease and desist letter through my brother. My mom called me twice that weekend. My dad sent me a text that said, I think we need to talk. Call me when you can. I called him back that Sunday evening. He said he thought I had overreacted. I said, she made a public post implying I was using money to control people I love. He said, it didn't say your name. I said, it didn't have to. He was quiet, and then he said something I wasn't expecting. He said, you're right. That wasn't okay. But I don't know how to fix this now. That was the most honest thing anyone in my family had said to me in months. I sat with it for a minute. And then I said, I don't know either, Dad. But I think I needed to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. He didn't have anything to say to that. We stayed on the phone for a little while longer, talking about other things. His truck, the garden he'd been putting in, the neighbor's new dog. And when we hung up, it felt different than it had in a while. Not fixed, but honest. The wedding happened on June 14th. I woke up that morning and made coffee and sat on my back porch, which looks out over a small yard I've been slowly turning into something nice. Some raised garden beds, a little bistro table, a string of lights I hung last fall. It was early and cool and quiet. I thought about the fact that somewhere across the city, my brother was getting dressed, probably nervous, probably happy. I thought about Courtney in a hotel room with her bridesmaids. I thought about my parents sitting in the front row in whatever they'd bought to wear. I didn't feel what I thought I would feel. I thought I would feel sad. I did feel sad. But it was a clean kind of sad, not the suffocating kind. Not the kind that makes you feel like you're disappearing. I went to the farmer's market that morning. I bought some flowers. I came home and put them in a mason jar on my kitchen table. I made a real lunch, not desk leftovers, and I ate it sitting down in my own home in the quiet. I had made plans for that afternoon. A friend I'd known since my early 20s. She lives 2 neighborhoods over. Came over and we sat on the back porch for hours, drinking iced tea and talking about nothing important and everything important. She knew the whole story. She'd been the one I'd called crying back in March. She sat with me then and she was sitting with me now. At some point in the afternoon she said, "How are you actually feeling?" I thought about it for a real minute before I answered. Like myself, I said. For the first time in a while. I have not spoken to my brother since that Sunday call before the wedding. My parents and I are in contact. Careful, occasional. Different than before. My mom still mentions my brother sometimes, and I listen, and I don't engage much. We haven't resolved anything. I'm not sure a resolution is on the table right now, and I've made a certain peace with that. What I have resolved is this. I know who I am. I know what I did and why I did it. I know that I gave for 4 years out of love, not leverage. And I know that the people on the receiving end of that were not wrong to take it, but they were wrong to treat me as someone whose presence was optional while my money was not. I keep the banking records. Not as a weapon. I don't have plans to use them. But they're there. Evidence of something real in a story where I sometimes wonder if I made it too easy for people to pretend I wasn't. My transfers to my parents are still running, lower than before, and I revisit that decision every few months. Not with anger, just with honesty. Asking myself if it still reflects who I want to be and what I can actually afford to give. Financially, emotionally, in every sense of the word. I got a promotion last month. I took myself to dinner to celebrate a real restaurant, a real reservation, the kind of place where you order dessert without doing math in your head. I sat at the table by the window and I watched the city outside. And I felt something I don't have a perfect word for. Not triumph, not sadness, not loneliness, just room. Like I'd finally set something heavy down and realized how long I'd been carrying it without noticing. I paid the bill myself. I tipped well. And I walked home in the warm Chicago evening, through streets I know by heart, back to the apartment that is mine and quiet and exactly enough. I've thought a lot about what it actually means to give freely. I used to think it meant giving without ever bringing it up again. Without keeping score. Without letting the other person feel the weight of what you did. And I still believe that, mostly. But I've learned there's a version of that belief that can slowly hollow you out if you're not careful. One where giving freely, quietly becomes accepting anything in return. And you don't even notice it's happened until you're sitting in an open-plan office, being told you're not on the guest list. What I did for my brother came from a real place. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't performing generosity. I wasn't building up credit I planned to cash in someday. I helped because I loved him, because I could, because watching someone you care about struggle when you have the means to ease it feels worse than just helping. That's not virtue. That's just how I'm wired. But here's what I've come to understand. Slowly and a little painfully, the way you treat someone tells them what you think they're worth. And for 4 years, without ever saying it out loud, my family had been telling me something. They were telling me that my presence was optional and my money was not, that my feelings were a complication and my bank account was a resource. They didn't sit down and decide that. They probably never thought about it in those terms. But actions have a logic to them even when intentions don't, and the logic of what they did was clear. The hardest part wasn't the wedding. It wasn't even the Instagram post. It was my dad saying you can't give with expectations, because he wasn't wrong, exactly, but he was applying the true thing to the wrong situation. I didn't have expectations. I had a basic assumption that the people I loved would treat me like I was part of the family. That's not an expectation. That's a floor. And when someone falls through the floor, the problem isn't that you expected too much. What I've carried with me from all of this is something simpler than I thought it would be. It's this: how you respond to being wronged matters more than the wrong itself, because the response is yours. My brother made his choices. Courtney made hers. My parents made theirs. And I made mine. One click to cancel the transfer. One call to an attorney. One afternoon at the farmer's market on a day I was supposed to be at a wedding. Every one of those was a decision about who I am and what I'm willing to accept. That's the only thing I actually controlled. And it turned out to be enough. I didn't get revenge. I didn't blow anything up. I just stopped shrinking. And something I didn't expect, the moment I stopped making myself smaller to keep the peace, I started taking up exactly the right amount of space, not more, not less, just mine. The raised garden beds are doing well, if you were wondering. The tomatoes are coming in early this year.